Thank you so much for joining the Mothers-in-Law podcast. We are here today with Sue Bunnell for part 2 of her amazing insights and observations about how to be a great attorney and an amazing mom.
What I would say to these young women lawyers who are moms, be kind to yourself, right? The world is going to be cruel enough. You do not need to pile on. You do not need to add one more log to the fire, right?
Welcome to The Mothers-in-Law, a podcast exploring the demanding world of being a mother and a lawyer. Join my mom, Carrie Foliani, as she shares real-life stories and practical tips to help you find joy and balance in your life. Let's embark on this journey of community and support together. This show is sponsored by General Counsel West, a law firm that supports companies transforming healthcare comprised of mothers and fathers practicing law.
What was that moment when you're like, oh my God, there's more that I want, and how are you going to get there?
I think when I felt frustrated and was willing to step out of the victim role, I think that's when growth really happened for me. When I was willing to stop stomping my feet and actually start using my hands and brain, to make progress for myself. And obviously everyone has a different path, right? I now lead a group called the Catalyst Program inside the law department at Wells. And I mean, our law department is 1,200 people. We serve a company of 40,000 people. It's big, right? Yeah. And so I teach a cohort of 30 or 40 people every year. Well, I mean, what's interesting is we have coaching sessions. They're paired one-on-one with a mentor where they get to kind of take what they've learned and really take the lesson and break it down over them. Because, I mean, you can give people the lesson and that's the blanket, but sometimes you're laying the blanket over the Sahara. Sometimes you're laying it over the Himalayas. Sometimes you have it in the middle of the ocean. Like the same lesson is going to hit different depending on where you are. It's going to hit different depending on whether you're feeling massive, capital A ambition, or whether your ambition is more impact, right? Like, I don't want any other job in this bank. And that makes me different to a good portion of the department. But what that means is I get to show up with an ease and a generosity and an openness, because I'm not in competition with anyone. The only person I'm in competition with is myself to be the best me I can be. And that's a fantastic day. But when I was going for a bigger job and I was in competition, I was like, what's funny is I knew the folks I was in competition with, and we were all rooting for ourselves, but also rooting for them. Right. Like, I mean, I think it's still possible to do. There's times when I didn't get a job and somebody I knew and liked got the job. And I was thrilled. I think it's possible, especially as we get older and we're intellectually, we have capacity to go, I fully feel this while I also fully feel that. Right. Yeah. I am sad for myself while I'm being thrilled for my friends. Right. Yeah. And I think the same thing is true with our kids. Right. Which is, I get that, my child is not, typically I think our biggest problems is when our child isn't wired the same way we're wired, right? So my number 2 kid, who is like, that's just a way easier kid for me to deal with, because that kid's wired the way I'm wired, right? We have the same shorthand, we have the same language, and we traveled together. He studied in Europe this spring, and he and I were traveling around together, and we were both like this. My oldest and my husband are a little bit more facts and information, are not necessarily quite at the fingertips. And the two of them were traveling together. And it's a funny story. They showed up at the airport a little bit early. And by a little bit early, I mean a day and a couple hours early, because neither one of them had gotten the day of the flight. I mean, I guess I should be thrilled that it was a day early, not a day late.
Oh, for sure. But still.
But I think, I think we're most frustrated with people who are not wired the same way we're wired. And when, and it's one thing, like, you can change your work environment. Like, my understanding is you can't swap your kids, although there have been times where I've wanted to swap my kids.
I hear you.
So yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to work, I am a big fan of really kind of having an annual check-in with yourself. Like, am I continuing to learn? Am I continuing to expand? Am I having fun? Do I have a laugh? Is there someone here who I want to grab coffee with? Like, people don't need to be your best friends, but is there a positive vibe? Like, when someone needs help, do people raise their hands or do people stare down at their paper? Like,
right.
I don't, I think that's really it. And I'm very fortunate to be in a great group now. And, when people go on vacation, it's like, hey, do you need any help? And what can I do? And I mean, I think it's an easy place to get behind, but I think folks who aren't feeling that, the question is, how do I put myself in a position? How do I expand my opportunities? And there are a lot of folks who do that. I don't even know where to start. And I get that, but we're lawyers, so we've got those associations. We work in a specific area. We've got those associations. We work in a specific industry. Some of us, we've got those associations. And I think it's just expanding the pool, because there's a great study on the law of weak ties. Like, when it comes to looking for a job, all the same things that your best friends at work know. If you have the same exact information pool, but people who you went to college with, or people who you went to law school an age ago with, or people who you grew up with, like, those people are your weak ties, and they have a circle of information that is totally different to your circle of information. And I think, first of all, it feels like you're getting something done. Like, I'm going to reach out to Carrie and say, hey, I wonder if there's anything for me down in Orange County. Right. Or, hey, I went to law school at UCLA. Hey, UCLA buddies, like, is there something going on? I think understanding that expanding our circles of experience is necessarily going to bring in more opportunity. And I will tell you too, sometimes you look around and it's really easy to see the nightmare that's in front of you. But you look around, and I know folks who've gone out there in the world and interviewed, and they've come back going, oh no, actually I'm fine. Like, this actually is way better.
Right. But you have to, I tell everybody, you should go to every interview you're asked to go to as just a data point check, just to meet new people. I love making the world a smaller place, but I also think it's because of oh, that looks actually horrible. I would never want to go there, and just to validate you're in the right place. But I do want to just pause, because I know for a fact that you've helped create the culture that even contemplates this concept at Wells Fargo. Like, this is pretty innovative to have a program that actually fixates on something that matters so much, but that we don't often get time to think about because we're so busy doing. Do you feel like that's made an impact on that environment to make it a better experience? I mean, it's 1,200 lawyers is a lot, and I know this is a growing program, but even with the ones that have participated thus far, it's pretty awesome that they're investing in that and that you're such a key part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, 1,200 legal people all in. I don't think not all lawyers, professionals and consultants and paralegals and admins. So I want to say all in. But when I started here 25 years ago, the idea that if you went from one group to another group, you were a traitor. There was a lot more possessiveness. There was a lot less idea that look, if you stay anywhere in the family, you're doing great, right? Yeah. So I think the company has undergone sort of a real change in attitude about how it educates and how it trains and how it develops its people, and it absolutely for the better. And it mirrors, frankly, the path in the world of put your head down and grind it out, right? To actually sort of a heads up thought about where I want to go next. There's a fun thing that I know we've licensed in from outside, but it's called an opportunity graph. And what it does is it shows you everyone who has your current title, the different jobs they've gone on to do. So if you can't think of something that you might want to do, we will literally tell you, somebody has gone from legal to risk management, or legal to compliance, or legal to name your poison.
The mapping, that's fascinating, because people get stuck. Even I was with a bunch of female lawyers last night that were dissatisfied in the law firm life, because it's not easy, it's not for everybody. But they had gone on, and the different things that they've gone to do. One was a publishing, one was in writing, one, it was a fascinating conversation, because you don't think that way when you start as a lawyer. You think, I have to do this, I need to be a partner, and there's 1,000 different paths. So the fact that they created an opportunity, that's amazing. That's a really incredible.
Well, back in the day when I was in law school in the 1900s, no, it was actually.
I was too.
But I mean, I was, but my children will often say, Mom, was it like that in the 1900s? They're talking about 1544.
Yes,
very insulting. Awesome. I don't like it at all. But I mean, I was in law school from, I graduated in 93. So many years ago, but math is hard, so I won't do it. 32 years. Okay. What you saw was, in the TV in the world, you saw litigators and folks who did M&A. There was no multiplicity. There was no multiverse of what a lawyer could be in the world, right? And you certainly didn't see in-house counsel, right? And frankly, the law firms I worked at, they were like, in-house counsel is for people who can't hack it in the law firm. That was absolutely the perspective. It was delightful and super condescending. But
I've never heard that, actually.
No, but I mean, you didn't see that there were folks, and folks that had taken, I think being a lawyer isn't sort of the albatross around your neck. It's the platform on which you stand, right? And so lobbying and public policy and legislative work and politics themselves, and certainly in-house counsel and compliance and risk management and privacy, there's a million different offshoots of, we have taught ourselves to think critically. We have taught ourselves to evaluate risk. We have taught ourselves to speak cogently about how to lead people who are less educated than we through some pretty complicated decision paths to get to a productive decision, because all of life is a trade-off, right? To get to move things forward, to either to do social good in a nonprofit, to make revenue in a for-profit company, to drive to maximum benefit, maximum utility in a government or in a public policy sense. So I think we are smart, thoughtful, intentional people, and I think we can put that energy towards anything. And I think the days of, if you didn't make law firm partner, you're a failure, are gone, and I'm super happy about that. That is absolutely the system that I grew up in, and I'm glad that I'm sure there's some folks who still really feel that, but I didn't become a lawyer because I wanted to be a partner. I actually became a lawyer because this is going to be terrible. I'm going to tell you the story. You're going to laugh me funny. So we grew up in the same town, and it's a town that had a decent amount of money. And my dad was a salesman, which meant we had some great months and some not great months. And I will tell you, the kids of lawyers, mostly at that point dads, I don't really think I knew any moms who were lawyers back then. They all seemed to have very organized lives, and they had trips to here, and there never seemed to be a huge want, right? And our family had a lot of this, right? And so in my mind's eye, being a lawyer was a way to have financial stability. And that was the only reason I wanted to be a lawyer, right? It wasn't because I had to have a corner office, or it certainly was because I did not want to go into court. I think having a service that writes down every word I say is not going to be
good for us. No, it's not good.
Not good for anyone. Not good for me, not good for the client. No one wins. But for me, being a lawyer was my path to not having to worry if the clutch in the refrigerator broke down the same month, which one am I going to pick? That for me was it's okay to have these months. I just wasn't going to, again, we all make different mistakes than the ones made on us. My parents loved us. They wanted the best for us. I don't think they realized how that felt to a kid. And they did great. But again, I lived in a town that was very, very wealthy. And it wasn't until I went to Berkeley, and I realized, oh, okay, we were just fine. I had a data set problem. I was looking at this little tiny range of super rich people and thinking I was over here in poverty, right? And then I went to Berkeley and I was like, oh, I'm incredibly fortunate. And I had some moments where we were less fortunate relative to my peer group, but I never worried about food. I never worried about a roof. I never worried about a lot of things that frankly were pretty dire adverse childhood experiences for some of my larger cohort when I got to a place that had a full, through the full bell curve.
Totally. And I think there's so much truth to that. And even navigating that with my own kids, we are constantly narrating about how small their data set is and how critical it is to branch out of this, because, they'll learn those lessons. They will learn the lessons when they need to, but it is I think that's such a powerful, the financial security thing was definitely a driver for me as well. I wanted to go into theater, but that seemed uncertain. But when I went to the law firm and I realized you had to fight for your hours, that was actually a little more uncertain than I expected too. The fluctuation of getting work and getting enough work and all of that was a different stress. So it's I don't know, the grass is always greener, I feel in those circumstances.
But again, I think when you come back to lawyering and parenting and trying to integrate it all, I wanted my kids went to parochial school, and I wanted them to have an experience where they were not at a private school where everyone had a G5, right? And a second and third home. I wanted them to see that in my hometown, their hometown, which is San Francisco, and where I live now, that there are doctors and lawyers and captains of industry, but they're also nurses and firemen and policemen and teachers and contractors and a guy who's a crossing guard. I wanted them to see the full range of jobs, and all of them are valuable and worthwhile. I told them that any job that you do with respect is a job that deserves respect. And any job that you don't treat respectfully, then you're the problem, right? Because every single job can be done with respect and can show that you've got class, that you've got a sense of integrity and a sense of self. And it doesn't matter whether it's the most, frowned upon menial job, right? There was a time in college where it's like the way to get money, the easiest was like, I cleaned houses.
Yeah.
And it was like, everyone's like, oh, and I remember saying that to somebody from my hometown who reacted exactly like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? I listen to my music and
Nobody
it's great.
bothers you.
And,
But
it's like very low on customer service.
Yes, but very important at the same time,
Yeah.
It's so true. I don't want to miss the McDonald's story for sure.
Oh,
See, I'm glad I wrote it down because I'm, early onset senility. I'd love to hear why it's okay to lie to your kids.
So I think there's times where my oldest knew everything and had to know everything. And there were times when I realized that I realized I could say, oh, do you remember when? And if he didn't remember, his first inclination is going to be, of course I remember. I never forget anything. And so he always wanted to go to McDonald's. And I'm from Southern California, so I'm an In-N-Out girl. And of course, it's the early 2000s and, processed food and, not that isn't true now, but like certainly lots of press on that. So Nico would be like, Mom, I want to go to McDonald's. I go, honey, don't you remember when you went to McDonald's and you got sick all over yourself? You said you would never go to McDonald's again. You don't remember? And he went like, oh, of course I remember.
Oh.
But of course, so I go, well, we can go to In-N-Out. And he's like, but Mom, I think I got sick because of the burgers and fries. And I don't think I got sick because of the cookie. And I was like, yeah, smart. He's that kid. And I would go, I go, honey, I'll go through the drive-through and I'll get you and your brother. That's totally fine. But I just, like, you don't need to be eating. So he was, I don't know what age he was. He was barely preteen. He was like 10 or 11. I go, I fully lied to you. He's like, what?
Oh.
And I was like, honey, you know what? There are times when you need to help your kids make good decisions because they can't make good decisions on their own because they are bombarded with messages about the excellence of McDonald's or what have you. I go, sometimes I do things because it's easier for me and that has value. And he's like, Mom. And later he and his brother have both laughed like, Mom, this is genius. Like we were such idiots. And I was like, yeah.
That's amazing. So that's again, like any positive feedback coming from them. I love it. I mean, do they ever, I know you shared a really sweet text from one of your sons before we started, because I think that's another place where a lot of young moms are in disbelief of the potential for positive feedback, from your kids, because we're working so hard. We're uncertain. It's a mess. Like, I'll be honest, like there's a lot of places when you're being a working mom that is messy, when you don't know if it's resonating or they're even seeing anything that you're doing. Yeah. How has that been, with your sons? Like, what has their kind of experience been with you? And what, obviously they're very vocal in sharing. What have they shared with you that might help give us a little hope or just a reality check on what it's going to look like in another 10 years?
Well, I mean, I'm 23, almost 24 and 21, and every phone call ends with, I love you. And because I cultivate a culture of appreciation, I am constantly telling them what I appreciate about them. I'm a big person for supporting effort and supporting intention and trying to focus less on the outcome, because kids are imperfect. And even when they're trying, sometimes the results are so awesome, or they're doing things great. And then they have this moment, they have this moment late in high school or early in college where they do something truly effed up. And you're just like, and it comes down to you. I thought I taught them better. And you're just like, you realize, their little brain was like, glitch, peer pressure, and the reality is that, how they are when they're 8 and 9 and 10 and 11, when they're, I love you, Mom, and they want hugs and they want love, they get back there. I mean, I think the tsunami of hormones and peer pressure and academic pressure. I was somebody when my oldest kid was in 9th grade, I said, I'm going to be clear with you. The world's going to freak out about college. There are 3,000 colleges between Canada and the Rio Grande, and there are more if you go international. You will go to a college and it will be great. And I started really early, right? And I just said, you'll go to a college and it'll be great, right? Yeah. Now, when my oldest was a senior, it was when COVID fell, right? He was a senior in high school. And he was like, he really needed to not be in our house. Like, I think there's that whole thing that happens, like, so the second half of junior year through the end of senior year, that psychologist called soiling the nest, where they are so unpleasant that this person who you cannot ever manage separating from you, like that's what they have to do in order to leave the house.
My mom calls it the divorce, the year of the divorce.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what's happening. Yeah. And so even with him, that happened. I mean,
and again, I was like, okay, you don't necessarily need to go to school, though he did go to school. I said, but I think you're done being here. And based on your behavior, we're also done having you here. So I think it would be better for everyone in our long-term relationship for you to go to school. And he ended up going to school and it was fine. But I mean, I've always said, look, if you don't want to go to school, like there's go be a welder and make $180,000 a year, right? Yeah. Go work your way up to, and then own a laundromat and make $250,000 a year. Like you don't need to be a white collar type and hit send on the email worker in order to make very good money. I'm in my part of town, we're surrounded by contractors and folks who have their own small business who make amazing money. None of whom, did more than maybe, a year or so of community college, all because they had they had a different vision for what success looked like. It didn't have to be something that came with a LinkedIn profile and a series of letters after their name, because I don't think that's what makes you valuable. I think what makes you valuable is how you show up in the world and what you contribute.
But I think having a mom that's so successful that does have all the letters after, calling out that reality and sending that message early had to be so relieving for your children. I mean, did they grasp how awesome that was? Because that's not the message I got, right? I mean, I don't think that's probably the message
I think they do now.
Yeah.
But it's also one thing, Mom, you say that, but you were this person. And I go, yeah, I was that person. I did get 2 degrees in 4 years at Berkeley. I did go straight through to UCLA Law School. Like you look at my credentials and I look fancy. I said, but here's the thing, that's my path. That's not your path. Like, my oldest kid is an artist, and holy moly, Carrie, he is an artist, but he's an artist with all of the, loose tethering to information, dates and time frames, right? Okay. But when he's on it, there's no one more on it, right? So again, his path through is not going to be my path through, but back to what I said before is what I imparted to them is you need to be able to take care of yourself, whatever that means. You need to be surrounded by people who love you, and you need to do something that reasonably pleases your heart. And I'm the oldest one. I was like, I'd love you to be an artist, but you're going to need to be a welder or work at the post office or get a daytime job because we're not going to be funding your art. You're going to be funding your art. Yeah.
No, but it's amazing. I mean, to give them the freedom and also the responsibility, but knowing that early, I think it's just such a gift because sometimes it comes too late or it's hard to have a lawyer as a mom, in some ways.
But recall, we grew up in a town where there were kids who had not just enough, but too much.
Yeah.
And I think when you tell a kid that they don't ever have to try because they're always going to be taken care of, and I don't mean emotionally, right?
Yeah, no,
I mean in a
financially, yes.
Yeah, I think it wrecks you, and
it does.
And you think about the folks who work with, you want them to strive, you want them to try, because that's where we grow. We grow when we fail, as you were saying before. But folks, and I know the women who work in the trust and estate area, right, work with well-to-do and really, really well-to-do folks. And you look at the first generation of kids and the second generation of kids and what incredible wealth, overly generously distributed, does to sap the will to work.
Absolutely.
The desire, I think, and this is maybe just my Puritan, whatever ethic, but it's I think that we are at our happiest when we feel like we're making a difference, right? Whatever that means to be making a difference. And so I want my kids to feel like they're making it for themselves, for their world, that they lead with a sense of generosity. When they call and they say, oh yeah, my friend was moving and I rented, they didn't have a driver's license. So I rented a truck so that they could move their stuff. And I'm
it's so proud.
The idea that
but it's in the world. And that is I love this because it's not a message that's communicated enough, quite honestly, that our greatest success is, and I actually steal it from my dad because I think he was so good at just being radically generous. And that's my number one value for my kids. And when you hear that story that your son calls you and tells you that is better than getting into fucking Harvard or wherever. I mean, to me, being that in the world, it's you've succeeded. I mean, I think, does that give you the most fulfilling experience? I feel like it has to.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, Carrie. When my kids get good grades, it makes me really happy because I'm a nerd. I'm not my youngest is sort of a dean's list kid. And he's a kid who had a little bit of a learning difference. that he sort of aged out of, right? His brain grew, his whatever, so auditory processing. And I mean, like, I think just some things that, like, it takes a little bit longer. And you see those kids, and you'll remember when your kid was in first grade, and your kid is like struggling with this kind of book, and there's the kid who over there who's reading Harry Potter, and you're just like,
I have very familiar. But how I want to pause on that because my son, my older, had similar challenges, and I remember this really mean therapist when I was just really didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have this. I didn't know anyone that experienced this sort of learning challenge. And she's like, looked at me and she's like, this is going to be awful for you. You're not going to know how to deal with this. I looked you up. It's really hard for people that are like professionals and lawyers when you have a child like this. I'm like, I think I'm going to be really compassionate and help him. But it was so like, and I remember that distinctly, but it really, I guess, forced me into even handling it better just to prove her wrong. But it really was jarring. And when you have a child that overcomes that, like that must give you a lot of pride. I mean, that it's a lot to get through, also.
Well, it's really funny. It's like, I think the things that hold us back can sometimes be our greatest tool. Like, he had to do his work in advance. He had to have things planned out because unlike his brother who could study for 2 hours the night before a test and get an A, he had to really, which now has made him incredibly intentional and organized and planful in a way that the other one who kind of skid in at the very end. I mean, again, this thing that was a challenge. This thing that was a challenge. And the same thing is true, I think, in our lawyer world. Like, I think there's sometimes we're presented with challenges, a new topic, a new client, a new type of law, a new area. And I think sometimes we have amazing insights because we're new to it. Sometimes we have to learn things. Yes. We have to put ourselves in uncomfortable positions to learn new things that ends up making us just better overall, right? Yeah. We're, learning something over here that we never knew has made us better everywhere. And that's why I think, again, good parenting makes for better lawyering. Strong lawyering makes for better parenting. Certainly we're good debaters. I think we're normally.
That's true. And you handle it. It's so true.
But for me, it's this idea that you're never stuck, right? Yeah. There is always the possibility of making a change. And I'm not saying a radical change in a minute, like I was saying before, but there's that Japanese concept of Kaizen, of that sense of like, I sit where I am and I have acceptance of where I am and the choices I've made that have gotten me here, but I'm not stuck here. And there are things, both small and large, that I can do. And I, go to school and get a degree. Like, I know there are lawyers who are like, I'm going to go back and get my privacy certifications because I'd like to move. I mean, I think that's a more objective sort of, I'm going to make this change. I'm going to do it very intentionally. There are other things, I'm going to show up to these industry events. I'm going to reach back out to my friends who I've been so busy I haven't had a chance to talk to. I think when we start to take those little steps to make a change in our life, and we start to think like change is possible, right? It is possible for me to be there and to do things differently and to get to a place where I have more delight and joy in my day. When we start to see the world like that, there's a little part in our brain called the reticulating activation system, the RAS. And it's the thing like, when you get pregnant, then you see all sorts of pregnant people. When you buy a red car, then you see all the red cars. Like, it's that thing. What it does, it's the filter. Like, apparently we get like 11 million messages a day. And the RAS is what filters it for us. And so when you go through the day, and this is all the people who do the self-affirmations before they go to sleep, or the secret, or the world has good things coming to me. I expect the best from the world. I know things will improve. Like, the people who frame that for their brain, like the self-compassion and the self-talk, right? Like, I am not, this is not like super Berkeley and super woo-woo. This is all straight up freaking science.
Keep going. Yeah.
But the RAS is basically like, when you talk to yourself and you say, I know today is hard, but I also know it'll get better. I know tomorrow will be easier because I've learned this today, right? I know that there's something else out there, and I'm going to take the steps I need to take to find it. And I know it may take a while, but it's worth it for me to have a job that honors and respects and pays me well, and I'm going to go find it, right? So when you start to put that energy in the world, right? When you start to put that intention in the world, the RAS system in your brain starts to filter the messages, right? So you're getting messages that align with it. When you say the world is effed up, everything is shit, everything is wrong. Well, although right now in the world that we live in, it'd be hard to not conclude that that's partly true. But I mean, I'll say that, like, and I'm not perfect at this.
It sounds amazing.
I'm not. I can send you some. You can link it to the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be
a really super.
I mean, that's Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I think I am sort of a black-hearted optimist, right? I'm like, I can really be all the way, I can be neck deep in the shit, but my question always is, okay, so what am I going to do about it?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's not true, but it also doesn't mean it's not a tattoo.
Right.
It's
right.
a
And
day,
so you're getting out of the
right?
stuck. But I think like even your mantras, like I always say to my kids, like the most important things you say are the things you say to yourself. So if there's a possibility that we could implement this positive, and I think especially as moms, like giving yourself a positive chance that things are going to be better, or the universe is bringing me good stuff, or like there is such power in that. If it also has some brain function shift that is proven data, that's even more exciting. Because I mean, I didn't know about that.
Well, it's the reason why parenting the second is so much easier than parenting the first, because as hard as it was to get the first one through, 18 months to 3 years, when you get to the second one, you're like, oh, I know how this goes. I don't need to be like, I'm never going to have a night's sleep again. You know that you probably won't have great sleep for a little while, but you also know you're not just hopeful, but you know it's going to be fine. And I think, that's why surrounding yourself by people who are a stage or two ahead of you.
Yeah.
Like when your kid's in 9th grade and they've got kids who are juniors and seniors in high school, and you're absorbing their wisdom because you're a woman and you're smart and you're willing to take other people's wisdom in a way that teenage boys are not. That's how it goes. But I would say surround yourself by people who are not 400 steps ahead of you, but people who are 3 or 4 steps ahead of you, and watch what works well and listen to what did not work well, and make the decisions that you can, because other people's lives can be such a great source of instruction and guidance and cautionary tale. I know sometimes I've been both. I've been both inspiration and cautionary tale. We all have been.
Yeah, and but I think that's what's incredible about just tapping into, like, and even that's one of the things I think why we were connected again. It's because I was describing what I wanted and what I was seeking, and it was Laura Fontana was like, she's got that. You should talk to her. And I just feel like it's so invigorating to one that you're willing to share also, and that makes you extra special, because not everyone has to, but I feel like what part of that gives you fulfillment, to know that.
But Carrie, stop and think about it. Like, you're looking at me saying you're such an inspiration, but here you are putting on this podcast, and you got to understand you're an inspiration to the women who are listening to you. I think we look forward to the people we're inspired by. And again, we're not really aware. Like this today was when you said, this podcast exists because of you. And I was like, oh, I got goosebumps, right? Like, because I don't think we're thinking of, I don't think most of us walk around going, I'm an inspiration and people want to be me. Like, again, not how most of us are built.
I wish we did, but yes.
No, but I mean, I think that what we hold as true is sometimes inspiration to someone else, but but a lot of times we also have achievement amnesia. Like, I did all that, sure, but now I'm focused on what I want to do next, right? And we have imposter syndrome, right? And I think, I think a certain amount of self-doubt motivates you, just like there's helpful stress, there's hormetic stress, and then there's debilitating stress, right? I think there's some self-doubt that goes, I'm going to do it. Like, it's motivating, right? And there's some self-doubt that makes you sit in the corner in a dark room. So, there's some folks who are inspiring because they're a few steps ahead of you, right? Or a cautionary tale because they're a few steps ahead of you. And I've been that for other people as they've reported to me, but not because that was my intent. It was because I was sharing my truth, right? And I think when you're honest about the good and the bad and the ugly and everything in between, people take inspiration from it, but not because that's what your intent is. My intent is like, I was like, if I'd come to that conversation with you a year ago and said, Mary, super condescending, my path, and I'd really like to inspire you to emulate, like, that would have been horseshit, right? First of all, not how I roll. But second of all, like, I just come from a place of, I've made so many mistakes. There's some things that I've learned, and I cling to them because I too have achievement amnesia, and I too have hopefully productive self-doubt, not debilitating self-doubt. And, that is the benefit of, 30 plus years in a profession that is a real ass kicker sometimes.
No, it totally, I do, but I think like it goes back to like what is so beautiful is like that level of authenticity and being willing to share the mess, because we're all in a mess in some ways, and we've all learned from our messes and cleaned ourselves up and moved on. But I do think, the people that are closest to me know what a shit show that I actually am underneath what sometimes come off as a cool, calm, and collected strategy, but they know it and they still love me, and we walk together through it. And so I do think there is so much room for that. I would say when you think about, I love achievement amnesia. That's a new term for me. With respect to your mothering, what do you think you forget that you did awesome? Is there anything that you can tap into that deep memory and say, wow, I got a couple things right?
Well, I am maybe immodest enough to think that I did a lot of stuff right. I tried to focus, I always tried to focus on balance and kindness, balance in whatever task we were doing, right? And being kind in the world. Because I think without being a pushover, without being a doormat, I think helping my kids understand that they've got to walk their path, right? I think I did. I think instilling in them a sense of love and fun and humor, right? There's a great story. I have a salty mouth. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone who's listened to any portion of this podcast. And I'm at the playground with my oldest at this point, who's 4. He's standing on a play structure, and there's a bunch of moms standing behind me, but I don't realize it. And I've told him multiple times that we've got to go. Like, we've really got to go, whatever, there's time. And I go, look, you get down from there, I'm going to cut you into pieces, and I'm going to put you in a slow cooker, and I'm going to serve you up on a bun. And he's like, Mom. And then all of a sudden he catches the glance of these ladies behind me.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't realize it. And all of a sudden he looks up, he goes, don't worry, she's totally kidding. And I think to myself, understanding that, like, I mean, you probably shouldn't threaten to like fricassee and quarter your child. That's probably bad parenting. But learning that, like, there's humor and there's, you know, like, it's okay to joke around. Like, there's some things you don't joke around about. And I totally get the bright line. It's time to leave the playground. I was okay with that. But I think the sense of fun and delight, that the world is going to be challenging, but it's filled with so much joy and delight. And I think that's what I tried to impart.
I love that. Well, you are a delight. And I have to ask one last question. And you can say it's off limits. I didn't even preview this one with you. But, you know, the name of the podcast is The Mothers-in-Law. And we're spinning on some of the population that I know I've learned a lot from my mother-in-law. If you're willing to comment on anything that you've learned from your mother-in-law, or if she's inspired or driven you crazy, you can share whatever you'd like that's, you know, obviously authorized for the world to hear.
Well, my mother-in-law has now passed, and so there's no one on her family to listen to this. But I will tell you, she lived 7,000 miles away. So I had a very, you know, my husband is from Spain, so you know, his mom lives in Seville, or did live in Seville, and so my whole thing was, we were not at all the same person. But when I would ask her stories about when she was young to help me understand how she raised my husband, sometimes successfully, Carrie, other times men in Spain were raised to believe that they.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You had a big project. You had a big project.
Yeah. She would come to visit, and I'm sure she was just horrified that I wasn't a stay-at-home mom living to serve her child. But, you know, we would talk, you know, she clearly loved her family. So I really respected her, her devotion to her family. My devotion to my family looked different, but I never dishonored the way that she lived. I mean, again, this is somebody who lived through the Civil War, lived through Franco, like live under very different pressures to the ones that I had. And so I always tried to see her intent, even when the execution was not exactly what I would have loved.
This is amazing,
I tried to see the intent and ignore the parts that were less charming.
That's amazing. I think that's a very successful operation of the mother-in-law dynamic. Because, you know, I always say 2 women loving the same man is a very dangerous situation. So it sounds like you had some success underlying that. But I can't thank you enough. This has been an incredible conversation, and you are a delight. And I'm so thankful that you're in my life. And I do thank you for inspiring this podcast. And I know it's going to help a lot of people. So more good that you're doing in the world. Thank you so much, Sue. You're the best.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Mothers-in-Law with Carrie Foliani. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found the insights and stories shared helpful as you navigate your own journey. I also hope that you enjoyed listening to my mother. Not that I always do. For more resources, to connect with the community, and to continue exploring how to align your personal and professional life, visit www.themothersinlaw.com. We appreciate you.